Welcome to the Narrative Mindset Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, I would appreciate it if you went back and viewed previous episodes when you get time. Well, today is my second episode of the rebirth. And number one, I definitely would like to apologize for yesterday's episode. After I listened to it, it was like, holy shit, that was shit. Let's say that. But that is that's the process in creativity. You know, that's the process in yeah, like I said, that's the process in creativity, you know, is putting things out there and getting better, not trying to put out the best thing possible. You know, some people can put out things and they just take off. Other people, you know, we have a little bit of a struggle doing it. I think for me personally, it's just I grew up, I was taught to be a hard worker. So when I was growing up, there was no internet. There was no cell phones and stuff like that. So it was like, you know, go to work, do 30 years, retirement, whatever. But they weren't planning on the economy changing. That was the only thing. You know, and you can't really, you know, they don't know. They didn't know, should I say. And it's just like, you know, I don't know for my daughters, I don't know what the next generation is going to be. I have no idea. I can't look into the future. So, you know, you can only teach your kids, you know, what you know, and that's, you know, hopefully they will take that and build off of it and, you know, kind of retrofit for the next generation. But I didn't do rideshare today because I got up and I still wasn't feeling good. It's my own fault, by the way, because I've been going outside. It's been getting cold. I've been going outside with no coat, you know, short sleeve shirt, whatever, walking in and out the store, whatever. And I got to understand that my immune system is not as good as it used to be, because this winter season showed me real quick, we're not doing this. You know, let me zap you with a little cold, you know, real quick. You know, have you take a couple of days off, and then, you know, you learn your lesson and you're good. In which I do. You know, I don't know why I hate wearing hats and I hate wearing coats. I really do. Especially with the job I have doing rideshare. I'm in my car all day. So I don't really want to be in there sweating and all that kind of stuff. But I got to learn my lesson, because I definitely don't like being sick. You know, nobody does. You know, me with a little bit of a stomach ache, I'm just like out of commission. So I think it depends on how I feel tomorrow. I'll probably get out tomorrow and do rideshare. And speaking of which, I was out last couple of days, and it must be like, I don't know, they must be on winter break or something like that, because it was a lot slower out there. I was down in Ann Arbor, and it was just dead. You know, no kids, no buses, no nothing. So they must be on that. I don't know what you would call it. You know, end of the semester or Christmas break or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, I think I was waiting for like an hour, and then like I think I said it on my podcast yesterday, I had like 2 rides that were like really far apart, so it was a little bit different, but I ended up coming home because I wasn't really feeling that great. I kind of made myself get out. So after I did that, then today, like I said, when I woke up, I wasn't feeling that great, and I said, you know what, I'll stay home today because I don't want to be out there and not feeling good and trying to give rides and all of a sudden have an episode, stomach ache or whatever, and I don't want to be out there doing that. So I decided to stay home. But on today's episode, I'll be reading another story. It's called The Grand Unveiling. But I'm going to chit-chat a little bit before I get into that. I was going to discuss growing up. We went to church like 7 days a week. I was like what you call my mother's shadow. So wherever she went, that's where I went. Because, it was, I never wanted to stay at home. I'd go with my mom, and wherever she was going, that's, where I would go. Because I knew if I went with her, we were going to go to church, we were going out to eat, we were going to do this. It was going to be an interesting day. So going to church 7 days a week, I think it was, I think it was Monday was prayer. Wednesday was, I think that was Bible study. I think Friday was a church service. And then Sunday was regular church service. And every now and then they would have I guess you would call it a pastor's day or whatever. And those were fine, but usually ate at church and you were in church all day long. So it was a little bit different. I think that's what usually most, I'm not going to say it's only Black families, but I'm speaking on the knowledge of Black families. Most Black families went to church all day. Most Black families were raised in church, and that was just the initial upbringing. And we did that for a while. And I always thought that Christians could do no wrong. Christians were like perfect until I started getting older. And then I started seeing little things, little things that were like, well, hang on, this is, they've been teaching me that, this Christianity is perfection, and this don't look like that. Teaching me, Christians ain't supposed to do this, ain't supposed to do this. Not looking like that. So I started seeing that stuff, and I started just kind of making a note of it, a mental note. And over years, I ended up working with a few people, and it was like, they said some crazy stuff, really crazy stuff, and that further made the whole thing like, okay, it's let me make a note of that too. And then I'm not sure. I had a family incident, and I'm not sure what made me do this, but I don't know. I was kind of pissed or whatever, trying to help out a family member, and the whole thing just backfired on me. And I was sitting back thinking, about religion. I was like, I keep doing this stuff. I keep believing in this stuff, and it's just not, it's not making sense. And at that particular point, I decided, you know what? I'm not doing this no more. And I should have realized this earlier in life, that to me, I'm not saying anybody else shouldn't believe in religion, but me personally, when I thought about it, it just didn't make sense. The whole, if you pray, you do this. If you pay your tithes, this happens. It just didn't make sense. And it seemed like once I stopped doing that, that was when things started to happen. After I stopped, the whole, tides, all this other kind of stuff, that's when my, things started to happen. My money started to come back. Opportunities started to be, replaced, and, things of that nature, all positive. And it was like, okay, hang on. I've been going to church all this time, doing everything I was supposed to do, nothing. The minute I stop and say, you know what, this doesn't make sense, everything opens up. So it was a realization for me to start believing in science. And I had started this YouTube page too. It's called Galaxy Facts. I started a YouTube page, and the YouTube page was it had me do a lot of investigation into different things, because to make a video on a subject, you have to do the research. So it taught me a lot. I started listening to different professionals, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and some other professionals. Started doing that and started getting really deep into science. And it was like, at one point, I just said, you know what? I just don't believe in religion anymore. And that was just my thing, because for me, I believe that, if it can't be proven, then it's null and void. Science is true, whether you believe it or not. Religion is just a belief. Now, when you ask most people that are in science things that they cannot explain, only other option is God. But we got to understand that you're believing in something that can't be proven. So that was my thing. And then, I just kind of got further and further away from it. Nothing against anybody who believes in religion and goes to church and all this kind of stuff, and that's fine. But I don't know. I think that you really have to take it with a grain of salt somewhat, because it's not really, I don't know. It's not really something that I think you should put a lot of emphasis on, because I believe religion is basically, just being a good person. That's it. No, you shouldn't, hurt your family members. You shouldn't cheat on your wife. You shouldn't do all that. That's just common sense, So that was something that I had been thinking of, and something I wanted to get out. And I will shut up right now and get into the story. The story is called The Grand Unveiling. Imagine, if you will, a world built entirely on stories. Stories passed down through generations, woven into the fabric of daily life, explaining everything from the sunrise to the reasons we exist. For us, this wasn't an act of imagination. It was our reality. We grew up within the warm embrace of what many call religion, a structured system of beliefs, rituals, and moral codes, often centered around the worship of a deity or deities, and designed to provide meaning, purpose, and a sense of belonging. And for the longest time, it was the only world we knew, a tapestry so rich and encompassing that we couldn't conceive any other. In our childhood, God, as we understood the term, was a vast, omnipotent being, meaning all-powerful, who created everything from the tiniest microbe to the most distant star. This God was also omnipresent, everywhere at once, and omniscient, all-knowing. We were taught that this benevolent, watchful entity had a grand plan for the universe and for each of us individually. The core belief was the cornerstone of our upbringing. We learned about faith, which we understood as the wavering belief in something that cannot be seen or proven empirically, meaning you couldn't touch it, measure it, or observe it with your sense or instruments. It was a conviction held purely in the heart and mind, a deep trust that transcended logical proof. Our lives were punctuated by services or gatherings in a special building, perhaps a church, synagogue, a mosque, or a temple. These were sacred places, set apart from the everyday where people congregated to worship, listen to teachings, and participate in rituals. For us, these gatherings were fundamental. We would sit and listen to the elders or spiritual leaders interpret what we called sacred text or sculptures, holy books believed to contain divine revelations and instructions from God. These texts, like ancient scrolls filled with wisdom, dictated how we should live, what was right and wrong, and what the ultimate purpose of life really was. We learned about sin, which was defined as an action, thought, or a word that went against God's will and moral laws. Committing a sin meant disappointing God and could lead to negative consequences, not just in this life, but in the afterlife. The concept of an afterlife was vitally important. It was the belief that our consciousness, our soul, continued to exist after our physical body died. For us, there were two main destinations. Heaven, a beautiful, perfect paradise where good souls went to live eternally with God, free from suffering, and hell, a terrible place of eternal punishment for those who had committed grave sins and had not repented, meaning not expressed genuine regret and sought forgiveness. This framework, sin, repentance, and the promise of heaven or the threat of hell, was a powerful motivator for living a good life. According to the religious teachings, it provided a clear moral compass, a set of rules and guidelines that, if followed, guaranteed ultimate peace and happiness. The community itself, the collective body of believers, was a profound source of comfort and identity. We called them our spiritual family or congregation. These were the people who shared our beliefs, our values, and our hopes. They celebrated with us in joy and mourned with us in sorrow. There was an incredible sense of belonging, a feeling that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves, connected by a shared path and a divine purpose. The sense of unity, a common purpose, was profoundly reassuring. It told us we were never truly alone, that there was always a network of support, guided by the highest power, ready to uplift us. The world, as presented through the lens of our faith, was orderly and meaningful. Every sunrise was a testament to God's faithfulness, every good thing a blessing, every hardship a divine test or a lesson in disguise. There were no true accidents, no random events. Everything happened for a reason, part of that intricate divine plan. When we felt afraid, we were taught to pray, which is a form of communication with God. Expressing our hopes, fears, and gratitude, we believed that our prayer, we could connect directly with the divine, seek guidance, and even influence outcomes. It was a comforting thought to know that an all-powerful being was always listening, always caring. This was our foundation, a world where mysteries were explained by divine will, where meaning was inherent, and where our paths were, in a sense, preordained, yet guided by our choices within that divine framework. We didn't question it. Not really. How could we? It was the air we breathed, the language we spoke, the very bedrock of our existence. There was a beautiful simplicity to it, a profound comfort in the certainty that came with having all the big questions seemingly answered. But as we grew older, as the world began to unfold beyond the familiar walls of our spiritual community, tiny cracks began to appear in that carefully constructed edifice of certainty. The first whispers of doubt emerged, not a malice rejection, but a gentle, persistent questioning. Doubt, in this context, felt like a quiet unease, a flickering light that suggested there might be more to see than what was illuminated by sacred stories. It wasn't an immediate dismissal of everything we'd been taught, but rather a sensation that some pieces didn't quite fit together as seemingly as they once had. These questions often began subtly. Why were there so many different religions, each claiming to possess the one ultimate truth? If God was all loving and all powerful, why was there so much suffering in the world? Wars, poverty, disease, natural disasters that took countless innocent lives. We were told that God works in mysterious ways. A common explanation offered when divine actions seem incomprehensible or contradictory to human logic. It implied that God's wisdom was beyond our moral understanding, and we simply had to trust it. But as we matured, this explanation, while comforting in its simplicity, began to feel increasingly insufficient. It felt less like an answer and more like a gentle dismissal of a complex problem. We started to notice discrepancies, not just in the world around us, but sometimes even with the very sacred texts we held dear. There were stories that seemed to contradict one another, historical accounts that didn't quite align with the archaeological findings, and moral injunctions that, in a modern context, seemed harsh or unjust. These weren't glaring inconsistencies that immediately shattered our faith, but rather tiny, persistent thorns in the side of our certainty. They were like small pebbles in a shoe, initially ignorable, but over time, becoming increasingly uncomfortable. As we moved into adolescence and young adulthood, we encountered new ideas, new ways of understanding the world. Schooling brought us into contact with various academic fields, including history, philosophy, and increasingly science. Science, for those unfamiliar, is a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of testable explanations and predictions about the universe. Unlike faith, which relies on belief without empirical proof, science is utterly dependent on observation, experimentation, and evidence. It is a process of asking questions, forming a hypothesis, and educated guesses, designing experiments to test those hypotheses, and then analyzing the results to either support or refute the initial guess. If a hypothesis is repeatedly supported by evidence from many different experiments and observations, it can eventually become a theory, not a mere guess, but a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world, like the theory of evolution or the theory of gravity. Initially, we tried to reconcile these two worlds. We learned about evolution, the scientific theory that all life on Earth shares a common ancestor and has diversified over millions of years through a process of natural selection. This stood in stark contrast to the creation stories we learned, which often depicted a sudden, instantaneous creation of all life forms by God. We tried to fit them together, perhaps suggesting that evolution was simply God's method of creation. But the deeper we delved into scientific literature, the more we realized that the two narratives, one based on divine intervention and the other on observable, testable natural processes, were fundamentally different. The scientific method, with its emphasis on empirical evidence, peer review, where other sciences scrutinize research to ensure its validity, and the constant willingness to update knowledge based on new discoveries, was a revelation. It wasn't about unwavering belief, it was about unwavering curiosity and skepticism, questioning things rather than accepting them at face value. It wasn't about having all the answers, but about having robust methods to seek answers and embracing the fact that those answers might change as our understanding expanded. This felt profoundly different from the religious model, which often presented its truths as immutable and eternal. Established millennia ago, we began to actively seek out knowledge that challenged our religious framework. We watched documentaries about the vastness of the cosmos, learning about the Big Bang Theory, the leading scientific explanation for how the universe began from an extremely hot, dense singularity and has been expanding ever since. We read books on physics, grappling with concepts like quantum mechanics and relativity, which describe the fundamental nature of reality in ways that were breathtakingly intricate and elegant, yet completely devoid of a divine foreman. We explored neuroscience, understanding how brains generate consciousness, emotions, and thoughts, blurred the lines that once separated a soul from a purely biological phenomenon. As we immersed ourselves in this new way of understanding, the religious explanations began to feel less like profound truths and more like beautiful ancient poems, narratives designed to give comfort and meaning in a time when humanity lacked the tools to understand the universe empirically. The divine explanations, once so satisfying, started to feel like placeholders for what we simply didn't know yet, where religion offered a why to God's will. Science offered a how, observable process and mechanisms. The transition wasn't instantaneous, nor was it without its emotional turbulence. There was a sense of grieving for the world we were losing. The comforting certainties, the clear moral pathways, the promise of eternal life and paradise. It felt, at times, like stepping out of a warm, familiar house into a vast, unknown wilderness. There was a fear of the unknown, a fear of being wrong, a fear of disappointing those we loved who still held fast to the old ways. We were, in a sense, losing our spiritual family. and at least our shared understanding of the universe with them. But beneath the fear and the sadness, a powerful new emotion began to bloom, exhilarating. It was the thrill of discovery, the joy of intellectual freedom, the profound wonder that came from truly engaging with the universe on its own terms, without the filters of ancient dogma. We realized that letting go of the divine explanations wasn't a loss of wonder, but a diversification and deepening of it. Science revealed a universe far grander, far more intricate, and far more awe-inspiring than anything other than our religious texts had described. The complexity of a single cell, the elegance of physical laws, the sheer scale of galaxies stretching billions of light years away. These weren't just facts, these were sources of profound spiritual awe, a different kind of sacredness. The interconnectedness of all life on Earth through evolution wasn't just a biological principle. It was a beautiful testament to our shared heritage, a reason to feel deeply connected to every living thing, from the smallest bacterium to the largest whale. We found a new kind of meaning. Instead of meaning being bestowed upon us from an external divine entity, we realized that meaning was something we created, we discovered, we forged in our relationships with each other, in our contributions to the world, in our pursuit of knowledge, and in our appreciation of the natural world. Our moral compass didn't vanish. Instead, it evolved. It shifted from being based on divine commandments and the fear of supernatural punishment to being rooted in empathy, compassion, reason, and a shared understanding of human flourishing. We learned that being good wasn't about appeasing a deity, but about reducing suffering, promoting justice, and fostering kindness, because these actions generally lead to a better world for anyone. Embracing science didn't mean embracing a cold, mechanistic view of the universe. Quite the opposite. It meant embracing a universe that was vibrant, dynamic, full of mysteries yet to be uncovered, and profoundly beautiful in its elegance. Self-organizing process. The cosmic dance of stars and galaxies, the intricate machinery of life, the unfolding story of our planet. These became our new scriptures, constantly being updated, constantly revealing new wonders. We found that the greatest stories weren't the ones written by ancient humans trying to make sense of a terrifying world, but the stories written in the very fabric of reality itself, waiting to be deciphered by curious minds. So, where does that leave us today? We stand on a new horizon, looking out at the universe that is far vaster, far more ancient, and far more mysterious than anything we could have imagined in our childhood. We don't have all the answers, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's exhilarating. The beauty of science is humility. It admits what it doesn't know and then sets out about it trying to find out. Always open to new evidence, always willing to revise its understanding. Our journey from the certainty of faith to the dynamicism of scientific inquiry has fundamentally reshaped our worldview. It wasn't quite a journey of loss, but a profound gain. We gained a deeper appreciation for the human intellect, for the capacity to observe, question, and understand. We gained a renewed sense of responsibility towards our planet and each other, understanding that we are, in a very real sense, the conscious expression of this incredible universe, capable of both immense creation and immense destruction. We found that true wonder doesn't come from believing in predetermined narratives, but from the process of discovery itself. The universe isn't a magical place because it was made by a magician. It's magical because of its inherent complexity, its emergent properties, its breathtaking beauty, and the sheer improbability of our existence within it. And we, with our tiny, curious brains, get to be the ones to witness it, to study it, to marvel at it. This journey has filled us with an overwhelming sense of optimism, not a naive optimism that ignores suffering, but an optimism rooted in power of human ingenuity, compassion, and the endless pursuit of knowledge. We believe that by understanding the universe better, by relying on evidence and reason, we can build a more just, more equitable, and more sustainable future for everyone. Our world is no longer built on ancient stories, but the ever-unfolding, magnificent story of reality itself. A story we're privileged to be a part of, and one that promises endless chapters of discovery. And that, in itself, is the most profound and hopeful truth we could have ever imagined. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Narrative Mindset Podcast.